Good morning and welcome to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Happy Thursday. Here we are getting ready for another big weekend and the Savannah Book Festival just about to get underway, and it is going to be something else.
I know. Jack Carr is here, which is someone we had talked about yesterday.
Former Navy SEAL.
Yes, and he's actually from he is actually living in Park City, Utah, which is not too far from where I'm from. So he definitely looks like he could teach us a thing or two about survival, doesn't he, Bill?
Yep. Going to his event tonight. He's doing one of the opening segments.
So
going to be at the Lucas.
So do they typically do a book signing when they do these speeches?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's very fun.
They afterward. They will sit there. They set up a table for them and have the books there ready, and people can come up and have them autograph the book.
I love it.
Or books, whichever you prefer.
That's
and
fantastic.
they usually do it very well. Where they will give you, they'll have a couple of assistants where they're, if you already have a book, they just come up and they'll put a little card in there for him to page to turn to sign. And then, they ask you not to bring more than, 3 or 4 books at the most. If somebody, if we had Brad Thor back in it, you would come back and you get like about seven or 8 books.
Part.
Yeah, that's right. And everybody behind is like, would you hurry up for God's sake? So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Well, and if you guys don't know who Jack Carr is, he actually wrote the book Terminal List, which is based off of Amazon did a series based off of it, and it has done rather well. Chris Pratt actually starred in that, and he's actually a Christian actor who has gotten a lot of criticism. So.
Yeah. The genre that he writes in is like Brad Thor more than anything else, and Brad is such a one of these guys that he writes these international intrigue things, and it has to go through like the CIA has to look it over, and sometimes they'll call him and say, Brad, where'd you find out about this? So I didn't. I just kind of extrapolated and said, don't put that in there. because you've extrapolated correctly, and so there's one of those. So it's a lot of fun, and you meet these authors, and I don't care if you've heard of them or not. They are fascinating people. They give these wonderful lectures, and sometimes it's a serendipity thing. Like 3 years ago, we just managed to get the 2020 book signing in just under the wire before we had this needless shutdown for the COVID pandemic, and all the lies they told us about that. But we managed to get that one in, and I went to I'd never heard of this young lady before. But they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. I saw her book. Because they have a tent set up with the books from all the authors, and you can buy them. And there was one that said what was I'm having a senior moment here. Her name was Casey Cepp, C-E-P. I'd never seen the name before, but she wrote Furious Hours. And I said, well, what's that about? And I looked inside. It was about the writing of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, wow.
Harper Lee, who a lot of people thought was a man because of the name.
Yes.
But Harper Lee, that was her only book, really, that she wrote that was ever published. So imagine this. Imagine winning the lottery. You write a book, and it becomes an international bestseller through the roof. It's made into a major motion picture starring Gregory Peck, who at the time was as big as you get in. And she makes a bloody fortune, and then she never writes another book. And you wonder, well, was it beginner's luck? What was it all about? She'd written one previously that they finally published a couple of years before her death called Go Set a Watchman, that was sort of a prequel to Kill a Mockingbird, and it wasn't that good. The Mockingbird, sold through the roof, and then of course made into a major motion picture, wins the Pulitzer Prize. You just go on and on and on about this, and then she never writes another one. And I've always wondered why. Well, Casey wrote a book on why. That she was really not that good enough, that she'd had a lot of help, again, ghostwriters and coaches working with her to write To Kill a Mockingbird in the first place, and she's trying to write this a sequel to it. And she can't find the words, and she's up, all hours of the morning, and it's fascinating. And of course, she's living, and she's, money's not a problem. because she's getting all these royalties from the
Killian
book. You know,
Whitney,
she's fabulously wealthy from just the one novel, and of course all the residuals and the motion pictures and everything else. And what was so funny is that she was living in New York, and she's trying to get this thing published, and she's trying to write this, and said what her neighbors were a couple of guys named Daryl and John, and they don't know that they're living right next door to the Pulitzer Prize winning, author, and that they talk to each other all the time, but they're trying to make it in the music business. Turns out Daryl and John were Daryl Hall and John Oates, who became fabulously, had a string of hits as long as your arm.
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating, and she was like 33 years old.
Wow.
And I'm sitting, and she gave this lecture on her book. I got in line to see to hear her lecture. And she talked for about an hour and 20 minutes, and it was, without an or ah and she was a Toastmaster's dream.
Wow.
And gave this wonderful, wonderful lecture, and I sent her an email and asked her to be on my radio show, and then did about an hour and a half interview with her a few weeks after the event. Turns out she was a left-wing loon, unfortunately, but nevertheless.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I do too. And we came to loggerheads over things like the people rioting in the streets. So, but beautifully written. It was one of the few books I had read in a long time where I had to put it down either to go to sleep or to go do something else, and couldn't wait to get back to it to see what happens.
Oh, that's the best kind of book.
Beautifully written. And just unbelievable. So you will find these people that are just absolutely fascinating, and they give these great lectures, and you get book signings, and it looks like the weather's going to be nice, although cold, going to rain tomorrow, but it looks like it's going to clear up for Saturday.
That
So
is good news, because guess what? It's rained every weekend, I think, for the past 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. So it's a big. So meanwhile, going to the law business, the family of the man who died in the Savannah police custody from suicide is suing the city for $12 million. And this happened about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they say they're going to give the city. They're generously giving the city another 10 days before they go with this for the $12 million. Our WTOC, the CBS affiliate here, has a letter to the city of Savannah that said some of the details that they've never heard before. It was an ante litem notice, and ante litem means before the action, which means the victim is going to be suing you.
You're putting them on notice.
You're putting them on notice that they're going to get sued. Do you know how William Harvey died? Apparently they left him alone in a room, and he hangs himself with his shoelaces. Now, I don't know exactly how he did that, or strangled himself with his shoelaces. I don't know if somehow because he was in a room, he wasn't in a cell.
So it was like in an interview room.
It was like an interview room. And they left, and they didn't leave anybody in there. They left a guard outside the door, but nobody inside the room. And he already told him he was a schizophrenic. He was a psychotic schizophrenic. Okay. So police clearly erred in this case, and those officers, I understand, have been released from their duties. But this has been about 2 years ago, and I don't know when the ante litem case came up, but usually you only have about 6 months to a year to file that.
Well, and I also think that this goes back to having shortage of officers, probably not being able to follow protocol. I'm not excusing it, but I think that there are a lot of things that stem from us and this anti-police rhetoric that we've heard across the country. And I think, there's so much to that. Every single police department, I think, is understaffed. I'm not aware of any that aren't. And, I was able to have a conversation with the sheriff last weekend, and he said, no one wants to work.
No.
And he's like, the sheriff's office is not exempt. I believe he's
what, 100 deputies short or better?
161.
161. And the starting salary, he said, it's $42,000 to start, and all the overtime you want.
He told me that I could be making $140,000 a year with all the overtime and stuff that I could work. I was like, what? He's like, oh yeah, I have female officers making that. I was like, okay, well. it's a very lucrative profession at the moment.
Yeah, it is. So somebody said, you don't get rich going into police work. Well, maybe in this case you do. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, because we certainly need it, because Port Wentworth runs theirs off if they post something on social media to say how much they believe in God.
Well, I also think it's like I said, we have Savannah, we have Pooler, we have Port Wentworth, Garden City, Tybee, and then we also have Chatham County and the Sheriff's Department. So we have a lot of shortages across the board, and with the Soros DA here, it's not been working out real well for us. I did hear yesterday that the assistant DA was actually left the office yesterday, which
well, that's
probably good news. Well, he actually was not a great person.
Well, if he was the assistant, he wasn't. If he was hired by this woman.
Yes, and he.
She's a woman, right?
I believe she identifies as a woman.
Okay,
yes.
All right,
good. But he said some pretty foul things about victims, and he just, it's not a huge loss for Chatham County, but I do think it's a loss for us being. To have a functioning DA's office, which hasn't been happening anyways, but this is a mess down here.
Well, we see what happens, how bad things are with these Soros DAs, because one of them just let this guy that shot up Michigan State University. There are parents of 3 of the, and of course, and 5 are still in critical condition. I haven't heard of any more dying so far, thank God. But what a condition are they in? Even when they get well, are they going to be in a wheelchair? Are they, have they lost an eye? I mean, there are so many things that we don't know about them yet because of HIPAA laws and everything else. But the worst thing is, we've got all these parents now who are grieving because this woman decided that it was better for this guy to be out on the street for some sort of equity because there are too many black people behind bars or something along those lines. And the prime directive of government is to protect the public, to protect their constituents. And we're not seeing that with this administration, with these Soros DAs. We haven't seen this with this administration, which, speaking of which, in East Palestine, Ohio, where nobody from the government showed up at last night's town hall meeting. Pete Buttigieg, our Secretary of Transportation, was nowhere to be found. The CEO, I'm sorry to say that the CEO of Norfolk Southern Railroad decided he wasn't going to come and gave the excuse that they were worried for the safety of their personnel because they thought it might get out of hand. These people wanted answers, and their town may be destroyed. And the ecological ramifications of this, because there's something like 10% of our water supply in the country is up around that area. And what it's doing to the water, and of course the governor and others have said, well the water is fine. We did these well testing. Well, who did the tests? Turns out it was some people who were not from the EPA. They were somebody that the railroad had hired.
Well, and also the decision to do the controlled burn was Mike DeWine's, and he had called
the governor of Ohio.
Well, yes, and he had called the governor of Pennsylvania to ask him what he thought about it. And so I know it's ridiculous, but he did not have the authority to do that. That should have been a decision made by someone at the federal level. They were supposed to assign someone from the EPA to come and make those decisions. Granted, this started on February 3rd, Bill, and what day is it today? Today's what?
Yeah, 16th? Yeah.
So I believe 2 days ago is the first time that they said it's not safe. I probably wouldn't be drinking the water. Drink bottled water. When a government behaves this way, how are we to ever trust them, Bill? And how do we continue to let them govern our lives when they've put all of these people in danger? There was a video of this woman. She went out to her farm. Every single one of her chickens was dead. Every single one. It's not an accident. And, what happens when...
I wonder, I would hope that the chief trauma surgeon at Memorial Medical Center here, when he has when he's got somebody on the table that he needs to be fixed, I hope he doesn't call the CEO of the hospital and ask him what to do.
I hope not either, because the CEO probably has no idea how to do surgery.
No, he's not. He's there to run the business of the hospital. He ain't there to operate on people. That's what you hire a CEO for. I mean, so he calls the governor of Pennsylvania. Well, there's another brilliant soul.
Well, and the thinking behind that is because they are also impacted by the water and also the air. What's now happening is that people are concerned about the storm front coming in and creating rain, because it could fall in Kansas and all the way up through West Virginia and could cause harm to their animals and also their properties and their water.
I don't understand the logic. I mean, the logic tells me, and I know nothing about these spills or the chemicals or anything else, but it would tell me, it said, don't set fire to this. And we're bending over backwards to give illegal aliens, we're putting them in 5-star hotels up in New York that they're trashing. We're giving them food that they're throwing in the garbage because they don't like, because it's not their ethnic food.
Wild Bill. I'm excited to see the sun.
Oh, yeah. What we always complain about is sometimes we have beautiful weekends. We don't say anything about that. And then it rains when we get, well, it rains every weekend, doesn't it? It always does it. Okay, yeah.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, so, but Nikki Haley, good friend of ours, governor of South Carolina, and then UN ambassador, and very able politician, has made a major announcement.
Yes, she has. And, something that is interesting about Nikki Haley is she's been a little bit behind the scenes for a while. Like, I haven't heard a lot from her, and then she kind of has just resurfaced in the last little bit. And she did announce that she is running for president in 2024, which makes things interesting. I don't know what percentage of the vote she will get, but I think it's interesting when people run and maybe don't have the high numbers.
Yeah, she's not. According to the most brilliant woman on the planet on the View, she's really not that qualified. Because she's a Republican, of course. They said they want a woman president, but a woman announces she's going to run for president. So the people on the View, have you noticed the most sour, dour, and negative people on the air are named Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny, and are getting paid millions of dollars to sit up there and be stupid. And when they say all this stupid crap, much of it which is not true, and the audience applauds, then you know that their IQ level, public education, it really needs revamping.
Well, I don't understand how they still have a show.
I don't either.
I'm like, it's been, Barbara Walters wasn't always
because Whoopi thinks everybody is a racist except Hitler. And it was okay, and it was okay for him because he killed Jews because they were white people.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she's a terrible human being. I don't know how they have a show. I don't know how they're making any money, because I don't think their ratings are that great. I think that the clips do go viral because people are like, how is someone this hateful? How are these people able to speak on behalf of anyone?
And they're just wrong.
Yes.
I mean, they just make up stuff.
That is true.
So Nikki's not on their list, which makes me think that she'd be a great president.
Well, and I have some questions for Nikki myself. She was
I do too.
She was talking to I believe it was Fox News about the Ukraine war, which I think is something that we need to ask everyone that is running this time around about this, because I think that there's a lot of stuff going on that the American people are not happy with.
Yeah.
The railroad tracks divided the town by race. I was the proud daughter of Indian immigrants.
They should absolutely talk about getting Ukraine what they've asked for, which is those planes. Make sure they get the planes from Poland. Help Poland facilitate that. Let's get that done. The second thing is get them the humanitarian help they need. These Ukrainians are fighting hard. We've got to make sure that they're getting food and water and aid so that they can continue to keep their strength. Thirdly, we've got to have a strong conversation with our European brothers and sisters about how they become independent from Russia when it comes to energy. We've got to talk about liquefied natural gas. We've got to talk about how we can do this quickly. And then lastly, they have to make sure they talk about, one, how they are going to prevent chemical weapons from being used, because you shouldn't assume that's not going to happen. You should make sure that happens. And secondly, how you're going to deal with China, because China is helping Russia and we need to be a part of that.
Okay. How about European countries stepping up to the plate here a little bit? I'm agree. I should have gotten those planes from Poland a year ago.
Well, I thought that they were already there.
Yeah.
I mean, And here's the thing, a lot of the stuff that is happening, we are helping to fund a war that we have no business being involved in.
Exactly.
And
It's not our fight. We could, oversee some things and, give them, I agree with you, humanitarian aid. We get Samaritan's Purse and people like that in fact, the Samaritan's Purse is on the ground in Turkey right now, helping those people. That's Franklin Graham's organization. He and his son are doing yeoman service, and I'm sure they're probably going to be going to East Palestine, Ohio pretty soon. But
yeah, well, that's the thing, Bill. We have so many problems in our own country. I don't know. We have people starving here, and we're with all the shenanigans that are happening now. We have all of these magical balloons that have all of a sudden appeared in our skies. What is going on with the Chinese government? What are they doing? What are they up to? And
well, the president hasn't said a word about any of this. He did not mention it. He glazed over it a little bit in his State of the Union speech. But he has said nothing. Of course, they don't want this guy to go before the public and take questions because you never know. I mean, they could ask him about shooting down this balloon, and he might think that they did, that they were attacking Albuquerque's balloon festival. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that really bothers me, Bill, is that we're not thinking about the next step for us, because right now we have China, who is definitely wanting to take over Taiwan. They're saying at least by the year 2027 they believe that will be in full force. We have the Russia-Ukraine situation, and what our involvement there is also signaling to Russia that we want to go to war with them as well. And I mean, we really need to think about what we're going to do in our own country to help keep things, Well,
what worries me as much as anything is with all this military aid that we're sending there, what about our military? We've already been warned that we are out of Stinger missiles, that we are out of, we're low on cruise missiles, and they say it would take 5 years for us to reboot and get back up to where we were. 5 years? That's a huge chunk of time.
Well, not only that, what do you think Russia and China think when they hear this stuff?
And
then they see Joe Biden, they're like,
yeah.
There's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
Like, this is a perfect storm for us.
And what's Biden's role being bought off by the Chinese? All these millions of dollars they're sending to his deal in the University of Pennsylvania. His alma mater, University of Delaware. That's one of the schools he went to. That he said he went to. He said he went to Delaware State. He said he went to Harvard. He went to Yale. He went to Slippery Rock. I don't know where. You name it.
He went everywhere.
He was there, and he was a professor.
And he always went to black churches.
Yeah, and arrested for trying to get to see Nelson Mandela in South Africa.
Oh my gosh,
But,
the lies are unbelievable.
Yes, sir. This is Walter Mitty on steroids.
Yes. Well, and he's telling everyone the biggest whopper of them all now. I think we could hear it from Biden's own mouth what he has to say to the American people.
You thought you were bad off. Au contraire.
Yep.
So here he comes, and when you hear this, you have to wonder to yourself, exactly what planet is he living on?
Most of you have finally reached the point where your revenues are climbing and your budgets are stable, most of you. And so I know that you share my concern that some in Congress are putting that progress at risk by threatening to have America default on its debt, which would be catastrophic for counties and the country.
Well, there's Mr. Excitement. I didn't realize that I just checked my bank account, and it's not where it should be.
Your revenues are climbing and your budgets are stable? That doesn't apply to you?
Yeah, your budgets are stable because you don't have any money for them to be otherwise.
When you're paying $8 for a carton of eggs, I think that there's a problem.
People are maxing out their credit cards, and that's going to be the proverbial house of cards too.
Well, I think that's also an interesting point, Bill, is that people aren't willing to change their lifestyle, but they're willing to put it on credit to keep the lifestyle they currently have. And so I do think that it is a house of cards. And we have not had some really hard times here. I mean, even as bad as 2008 was, they didn't really deal with it head on. And I think that they curtailed it a little bit and did some things they shouldn't have done, and now we're going to see us have to pay the price for that when we see this economic downturn coming, and we're at the brink of World War III.
Yeah. This is you have to wonder once again what Rootin' Tootin' Putin is thinking over there in the Kremlin when he sees all this equipment that's being furnished by us, and we better start doing it for Taiwan because we were warned about this, saying when we saw Russia start building up on the Ukrainian border, and they said they were just doing military exercises. It just happened to be where just because Ukraine was 50 feet away, nothing to see here, don't worry about it. We're just doing military exercises to keep our guys in shape. And a lot of people fell for it. I was one of them. I said, I really don't think Putin is going to go in and invade Ukraine. Well, I was wrong.
Well, but honestly, if you have a president who basically doesn't really support U.S. policies and is encouraging some of this stuff, what do you expect? I mean, we're allowing people from other countries to come into our country unvetted, and, we have a disaster after disaster here.
And just to keep telling these lies that the Democrats have been telling for the last 60 years, that the Republicans are going to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, we've heard that. We could go back, I could play you political ads from 1964 that were saying the very same thing when Lyndon Johnson was running against Barry Goldwater. It goes back at least that far, that the Republicans are going to take all this stuff away from you, and it just is not so. And the president keeps hammering on this, I guess, under the Goebbels law rule that if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it. Well, coming up next,
you were able to sit down with Tim Malchek,
a troubadour, a Christian troubadour, and how he turned his life around, how it all happened. It's interesting how God opens windows and closes doors and opens windows, and just little things that seem trivial at the time turn your life around. Tim Malchek is a great Christian singer, composes all of his own music, records in Nashville, and every Tuesday and Friday morning he's singing for a group called Band of Brothers. And he is an amazing, amazing man. And wait till you hear his life story coming up next.
At Get Real America, we want to promote your business to our conservative audience.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security, and trust. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
That I ended up writing music for a living because I think I lived in a house where I saw how deeply it affected everyone in the house. And just how much everyone defined themselves by the music they listened to.
Music as a framework, I think, gave my parents my identity from a young age. You can like any music that you want if it makes you feel happy. And now when I hear certain songs, I think of them, and I think of them in their happiest state, and it makes me happy.
If they seem like they're having trouble talking about something, I try to tell them about a time when I felt something similar.
Whatever the issue was, we would tell them the pros and cons and how important it was that they had come to us because we could always help them. I think the real important point, we always told them, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, we will help you through it no matter what it is.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you on this Thursday morning, getting ready for a big weekend. Savannah Book Festival just about to get underway, and it's always fabulous. It is considered one of the best in the world. And after it being so young, we only did it like 15 years, it's really taken on it's really developed a great name for itself. If you if you like getting up early, or even if you don't, for the guys, there's a group called Band of Brothers. It was started by the Reverend Kenny Grant, who at the time was a pastor at Calvary Baptist Temple, and also Richard Barrow, a local pillar of this community and businessman. And they just got together with a bunch of their men friends to have a Bible study. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And every Friday morning at the Baptist Church in Garden City, First Baptist Church in Garden City, there's probably about 100, 150 guys that come in and hear a good Christian message from Reverend Kenny. And it also happens on Tuesday morning at the Life Christian Church on Bull Street, right across from the TV Center.
Can I ask what the purpose of it being all male? Is there a purpose for that?
Just Band of Brothers, but guys getting together, just like there's all women's groups at the Republican Women's Club, or even the Democrat Women's Club, whatever. But just guys getting together and calling it the Band of Brothers, which comes from, of course, from a famous World War II book and television series, and just getting together to hear Bible study, Christian message, and to get and to talk about the importance of men in society, the role of being a father, of being a grandfather, of being an uncle, whatever it is, and to be or a good business, just an honest person, no matter what you do in life, and the importance of it. And when you walk up to one of those meetings, you hear some singing, because Tim Malchek, who is a Christian singer, composes his own music. You'll find out in a minute. He's there already. Well, you're there walking up at like 5:45 or 6 o'clock in the morning. He's been there to set up all of his equipment and everything else to sing for us. Wow. But he has an interesting Christian walk, as you'll find out right now.
Go in the world and preach the gospel throughout the earth to all of humankind. Let the Holy Spirit bring conviction, and love's amazing grace will abide. Lay it down.
Well, Tim, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I was born 65 years ago in Binghamton, New York. Stayed there till I got out of high school, and then wanderlust took over, and I roamed coast to coast. Ended up out in Los Angeles for a while, Southern California, going after the mellow singer-songwriter vibe, and except when I went out there, it was the punk rock vibe going on. My timing just was never that perfect. Ended up in Nashville in the 80s, the decade of the 80s, and that's where some doors started to open for me. And it was also a time of great upheaval. I was, chasing the elusive dream, but at the same time, I wasn't living right. I was in the grips of well, this year would make it. I've been clean now for 28 years, but for 26 years, I had a pretty heavy-duty drug addiction, and fought that off and on for many years. And then finally one day, I just woke up and said, I'm gonna stop this, and did it cold turkey. Sick as a dog for 9 months. God had other plans. I was, when I was in the really heavy grips of things, I disappeared. I went on about a 7 or 8 day binge, and I couldn't account for my whereabouts, except that when I came out of it, I was in a hotel room in Roanoke, Virginia, with a gun pressed against my head for about 10 hours. Tried to pull the trigger, didn't have the courage. God was with me. I didn't know it, but He was with me. And fast forward a few more years, knew I needed to get out of Nashville and get away from all the temptation that was there for me at the time. So I moved down to Hilton Head, South Carolina with my then wife and my 2 children, and had another child in Hilton Head. And in the course of those years, finally in 1995, like I said, I woke up and got clean. And between 95 and 99, God starts putting believers in my life. Just knowing that I would respond to music. He puts a bunch of believers in there that were musical, and amazing how he orchestrated this from start to finish. When I look back and like, who am I kidding? I didn't have nothing to do with this, but he's been such a blessing. I got saved in 1999. I heard a song called "The Anchor Holds" by Ray Boltz. I for the first time, I felt like God was talking to me through the words of this song. I was a battered ship at sea with no anchor and torn sails. I responded to that and realized that I was going to die one day, and my mortality became very important to me. And I knew that if I died in my sin, I found out later, if I died in my sin, there was only one destiny for me, and that would be hell. And it did not appeal to me at all. I was driving down a highway, and I was driving a rental car in July 22nd, 1999, and turned on the radio, and it was tuned to a Christian radio station. I never knew Christian radio existed, and I didn't even know what it was. But the songs were jumping out of the radio and making sense to me for the first time. I grew up in a Catholic church, the Latin Mass, all you see is the priest back, and that's it, I started reading scripture, and the words are jumping off the pages at me, and I'm like, this is amazing. That, got me, and then I knew that God gave me some musical gifts for a reason. I wanted to use them for His glory, but I didn't know how. So I had found a church, and I went to the pastor of the church, and I said, I want to use the musical gifts God's given me to serve Him, but I don't think I know enough scripture. And the priest said to me, he says, don't worry about it. Just write what's in your heart, and God will do the rest. And to this day, that's the advice. That's all I've ever done. And 24 albums later, I've written every song by that premise. And here we sit today.
How'd you get hooked up with this crowd?
Well, I was in Shawshank for a couple of years. I got married in 2015 to a lovely girl here, Savannah native, Miss Leslie Warnock. We got married, and then I got offered a job. Kenny offered me a job as worship leader at Calvary Baptist Temple. So I did that for about a year, from 2015 to 2016. And then at that point, we started, Leslie and I put, I had started this ministry in 2001, a traveling music ministry, but it really got tightened up, and Leslie really helped with the administrative end. That I'm so right-brained, I can't even find a pen half the time. We began that, and then as one thing would lead to another, Kenny invited me to come to Band of Brothers, and I said, hey, at what time? But I did. I started coming, and he asked me one day, he says, why don't you bring your guitar and sit in and play some music? So I did that, and it just stuck, and we've been doing that ever since, and just being totally blessed by the guys in the group. The Band of Brothers has collectively come together to assist in the production of my last 4 albums. And when I say assist in the production, they help to fund it, because I do all my recording in Nashville, and it's just been one blessing after another, and it continues to be.
Well, Tim, it's one thing. I had a DJ business for many years, and all of my gigs were like at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, but sometimes afternoons or something. Yeah. I never had to have one at 5 o'clock in the morning.
It took some getting used to. I'm not a morning person by any stretch.
What is it? And you wrote this Band of Brothers song that you sing that you always wind up with.
Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things. I wasn't commissioned to write it or anything. It's just one of those muse things that just kind of hit me, And I remember the first morning that I sang it for the guys, and you could have heard a pin drop. And when I got to that line that says, "Meet me here in this place," meet us here in this place, the whole room just erupted, and it just really spoke to everybody. And I just give God the glory for that, because He wrote the song through me. And I firmly believe that, and just, it's been our branding ever since.
Well, you become part of the program here, and it doesn't look like, when you're singing sometimes, that they're listening to you. Everybody's
Right.
having breakfast and talking.
It's fellowship time,
But
they are listening, though. That's the
you
thing.
can hear them singing along, especially Band of Brothers.
Yeah, and now God knows.
Yeah, and God knows. Yeah,
they love that answer thing, but it is. It's a time of fellowship. You're getting through, because in the back of their minds they're hearing it, and they're starting, like you say, they start to sing along with the songs. And I'm doing all original music here. I'm not doing any other outside, because copyright issues, because of putting it on.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, preaching to the choir.
All right. What and this has been a blessing to you too, hasn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, in every way, and it just continues to be. I mean, this last album that I just finished, called God Knows, it's my 24th album, and I really feel that it is a culmination of probably the best work that I've ever done. And it's, again, God gets all the glory for that, because these songs some of the songs I wrote during the pandemic, there was a lot of writing going on there, because I didn't have nothing else to do. I couldn't leave my house. And, my first brush with COVID almost killed me, so that really juiced up the creative thing again, I don't know if at this point in my life, I'm 65, I don't know, and, I may or may not do another album. I don't know. I haven't written anything since this one came out.
It'll come to you.
Yeah, God wants it to come. He'll make it happen.
Well, you're a blessing to us, Tim. And thanks for your time. Thanks for you doing.
Well, thanks for having me.
On more ways than one. Thanks.
God bless you.
Appreciate it. God bless you.
We come together. We hear your word. We feel your presence. Our hearts are stirred. We are one body in Christ the Lord. Work through our fellowship. Let your voice be heard. We're a band of brothers, just imperfect men, a host of broken sinners, made whole again. We praise you for your mercy. We thank you for your grace. We're a band of brothers. Meet us in this place.
We should have been, man. Patience, trusting in God.
Rising early, we start the day. Your Holy Spirit.
Tim Malchak, what a great guy.
Yes.
And it's interesting, Brittany, first of all, and Reverend Kenny Grant and Richard Barrow, who started this and pillar of this community, said, that it wouldn't be the same without him. That he really is the glue that kind of holds it together as he's singing these songs while they're eating breakfast before Kenny's message. And it's interesting what we said, how God's hand moves mysteriously. So when he was telling that story, remember he said he was driving along and he was in a rental car, and when he said rental car, I was like, what difference is that? What does that have to do with anything? So what? The rental car, whoever had it before, had tuned to a Christian radio station that he didn't know existed, and this music is coming out. What is this? And he said those songs were talking to him. So had he not rented that car, had he not listened to that station, his life may have been different.
Yeah, and such an amazing story, and such a great group as well. I love anyone that is building community like that. I think that it's really important, and the fact that they do it 2 days a week, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and so they meet 6 o'clock in the morning on Fridays and Tuesdays. So drop on by. One at the First Baptist Church in Garden City on Friday, and the Life Christian Church on Tuesday on Bull Street. So come see us, guys. You find out how it is, to be a man, what it means, and what the Bible says about all that.
Yeah, and I think we're going to touch base on a new generation when we get back.
Yeah, that's on the way.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security, and trust. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard. As we have the Christian File open, there's a lot of good things that you see the hand of God in places like Turkey, as bad as that earthquake was over there that's killed over almost 40,000 people that we know of. And that's and where our prayers go with them. Samaritan's Purse is on the ground over there, among others.
Yes, and in Asbury, Kentucky, there is something crazy going on there that no one can really explain. And Tucker Carlson had this story on his show last night.
Oh, let's take a look.
Political terms. You have to reach for theological language to really understand it. Some of it's just evil. Who knows why, but it is. And a lot of people are starting to figure that out. And the good news is a lot of people are starting to think more about what happens when you die. They're becoming much more interested in the spiritual life, which has been basically extinguished in the public square for a long time. So here's a sign that people are becoming more interested. Asbury University, which is a private Christian college in Wilmore, Kentucky, outside Lexington, began hosting a prayer service a week ago, but it never ended. It's still going on. People just keep showing up from around the world. The university has even set up overflow chapels to accommodate demand. Here's what it looks like. So we keep hearing about this. There haven't been many news stories on it, but it's all over social media, on TikTok, actually, of all places, and reports that people are flying in from Singapore and New Zealand to join whatever this is. And so we thought it'd be worth finding out, what is it? Allison Perfader is the student body president at Asbury University, and she joins us. Allison, you're so nice to come on. Thank you. What is this, do you think?
Right, what is this? That's what we I mean, that's the question, right? And a theme or a Bible verse that we've all been sharing with each other is Habakkuk 1. And the Lord says, look at the nations and watch, for I'm doing something in your day that you wouldn't believe if you were told. And it's happening, and we can hardly believe it.
Well, it seems remarkable. I mean, so many stories, you see them and you think, that's very different. I'm not quite sure what it means, but it's worth learning more. So my understanding is this began in a completely conventional service, and a boy got up and started talking about his own flaws and then something changed in the atmosphere and it never ended. Is that fair?
That's completely what happened. So here at Asbury University, 3 mornings a week, we have chapel at 10 a.m. sharp. The whole student body gets together and we sing praise to the Lord, and we hear a message from a speaker. And for seemingly no reason at first, on Wednesday, February 8th, it didn't end. And that's kind of the logistical side of what's been going on. And then, you know, on the deeper side of things, what's been happening here since Wednesday is there's a young army of believers who are rising to claim Christianity, the faith, as their own, as a young generation and as a free generation. And that's why people can't get enough.
That's amazing. So you felt like something like this was going to happen, because everything finds equilibrium, I think. Who are the people who are coming? Where are they coming from?
We don't know most of them. We've obviously been getting calls, hundreds of calls to the university switchboard number, but we have friends here from Brazil, from Indonesia, almost every state, and they just keep coming, and it's no wonder, you know, and it's like you said, I mean, especially in the midst of tragedies like what we've seen in Michigan State University, and even farther back to 2020, especially our generation was impacted so much, and so you have to wonder, you know, what's going to break. And in this case, the Holy Spirit has interceded for us here at Asbury and across the nation.
I assume you don't know how long this will continue?
I could not tell you, and I wouldn't want to guess.
No, you wouldn't. Allison, thank you. Great to see you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's really thank you.
Really political term.
Unreal.
I love that.
That's just remarkable.
Well, I also
and kudos to those. So when you worry about the coming generation, I think Plato was the first one to ask what's happened to the younger generation. So it's been going on for quite some time.
Well, I think that she also touched on something very important that I think a lot of us overlook, is that 2020, if you were in high school or in college during those years where it was shut down, I think that your version of freedom looks vastly different based off of that experience.
Exactly.
Because you were so restricted in what you could do. Your college experience was taken away from you. Your high school experiences were taken away from you. And I think that those people are going to value freedom in a way that, you know, my generation, we had it fairly easy. We didn't have a lot of huge impacts that happened in our lives like COVID. And so I think that we're going to see a generation full of freedom fighters.
For sure. I had, years ago, I'd heard a comedian make the statement, and I used it thereafter and claimed it to be original. But it was back in the 80s where he said, do you think we're going to be able to see things any clearer in the year 2020? And of course, that was a million years off at the time. And then along came, and we didn't see things any clearer. It was actually the worst year of our lives.
Yep.
So it's just, it is amazing what they're doing. And Brittany, I've been at one of the, on the National Day of Prayer, our church at Trinity Lutheran would be open all night. And you could go in at any time and just sit there and meditate. And my wife Pam and I went in, I think it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And we just sat there with about 10 or 12 other people that were just, just pick a pew and you sit down and you could read the Bible, you could just sit there. And I said, this is going to be, we're just going to sit here for an hour. And there was a calm and a peace that just came over, and it went by like that. I didn't want to leave. I can see that, once you start something like this, it picks up steam. And of course, the lamestream media, of course, paying no attention to it whatsoever. Thank you, Tucker, for doing this story. And it was genuine with Allison, genuinely thanking him for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we need to hear more about these stories because
the
media is so full. I mean, our politics is full of so much bad stuff day after day after day that there are so many good things happening. And I do think it is, the new generation. It's gonna be interesting to see how this pans out. But I think that also goes along with Nikki Haley. I think that that's kind of her campaign, is that it's time for a new generation. We have a lot of older people that are in government that probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah. And we need a religious revival in this country, as you've just seen. My alma, I'm a life member of the Ole Miss Alumni Association, and they keep asking me for money, and I ain't giving it to them because of I didn't think all the wokeness would take over at Ole Miss the way it has, all the different things. But I said, when I see Colonel Rebel again, you'll get some money. And so far, they haven't answered that question. So I don't send them any money, but I see every once in a while I give money to Hillsdale College.
They're doing some incredible things over at Hillsdale.
They really are, and they have these wonderful courses online that you can have to study the Constitution and
that are free.
That are free, yeah, no charge. I mean, they're asking you, we'd like you to make a donation, but you don't have to. So, and it's just amazing. So I save my money for them, the people that are doing the work and doing God's work, because that's what this country was founded on. And hopefully Nikki Haley's bringing that to the forefront. And I think it's interesting when we talk about how the Lord works in mysterious ways. The football player that suddenly brought prayer back to the NFL, where people were kneeling for God and not to protest the American flag and racial discrimination in this country that doesn't exist.
Correct. Well, and he was interviewed yesterday, and there were topics he was not willing to talk about, and I think it's interesting when we're craving that transparency from the government, from other people, from the news, and we're not getting it. Mm-hmm. So I think we do have a clip of that interview with Damar Hamlin.
From the ICU, the question on so many minds: what caused his heart to stop beating?
You're 24, peak physical condition, could run circles around me right now. How did doctors describe what happened to you?
That's something I want to stay away from.
I know from my experience at NFL, they do more tests than anything. And in the course of you having your physical, did anybody ever come back with any, say you had a heart issue or anything that was abnormal?
Honestly, no. I've always been a healthy, young, fit, energetic